There was no warning, no shift in the room, just a stupid mistake. A girl at the far end of the nearly closed back lounge dropped her vape on the sticky floor and yelped, way too loud for the hour, the sound ricocheting off the metal counters like something tearing through fabric. Her friend laughed, nervous, jagged, and the bartender shot them a look because he'd already started wiping down the taps, already counting minutes till lights on. Someone at the pool table muttered, "Seriously?" and bent to pick up their coat, ready to leave. Closing time. Everything in shutdown mode. Chairs stacked, music low, lights half up, almost nobody left. Which is why the moment felt wrong immediately. The bartender glanced toward the back corridor. Reflex, habit, and saw movement where there shouldn't be any. A shadow, then a figure stepping out like he'd taken a wrong turn in a building everyone else had already abandoned. Someone nearer to the bar squinted, then pulled her phone halfway out and shoved it back in too fast, like she'd touched something hot. "Sorry, we're closed," the bartender called out, but the words came out thin, like they were the ones apologizing. The figure didn't answer, just kept walking, slow, like he wasn't sure if he was supposed to be seen. A guy near the exit shifted, then froze, then did a double take so messy it looked physical. The girl who dropped her vape whispered something sharp. "Don't look!" But her eyes were already locked. Someone else snorted out a quiet laugh at the exact wrong second, which made the first girl bump into a chair, which scraped loudly, which made the man in the corridor finally lift his head enough for the light to catch his face. Not fully, just enough. And that was it. A pocket of air snapped. Someone gasped too hard. Someone cursed under their breath. Someone else, trembling already, lifted their phone again, this time not fully hiding it, and the screen reflected the face they thought they recognized but didn't dare confirm. The bartender tried again, louder. "Hey, we're closed." No authority, no control, just a statement that didn't land anywhere. Because the man wasn't walking toward the door. He'd stopped completely, right beside the mop bucket and stacks of crates, like he'd been there long before anyone noticed. A girl, with her jacket halfway on, whispered, "Why is he still inside?" The question wasn't aimed at him. It wasn't even meant to be heard, but it was. He looked up at exactly that second, exactly that angle, and it hit the room like a slap. Phones moved. Not high, not openly, tilted, half hidden, ready. The people who pretended not to stare were staring the hardest. The people who tried to leave found themselves slowing, turning, circling back just enough to see. The pool table guy put his coat down without meaning to. The girl with the vape mouthed something like, "No way," and stepped closer, then stepped back, then collided with a stranger who said, "Shit, sorry," way too loudly. The room wasn't big enough for this. Not for him, not for them, not for the moment that shouldn't have existed. Jungkook didn't move, didn't smile, didn't defend himself. He just answered, finally, quietly, in a voice that wasn't meant to carry, "I'm waiting for someone." And it landed wrong. Not suspicious wrong, socially wrong. Too normal, too human. Too much for this place, this hour, this near-empty after-hours room that should never have had him in it. Someone repeated his words out loud, mocking the cadence without meaning to, and a ripple of discomfort ran through the cluster of bodies forming in the center. A guy whispered, "This is bad," and immediately pretended he hadn't spoken. But it was already too late. Everyone had heard the question. Everyone had heard the answer. And now everyone was reacting in real time, crooked, unsynchronized, panicked in tiny ways. Phones slid out, hands shook, a chair scraped again. The bartender stopped wiping the counter. A girl's breath caught loud enough for her friend to elbow her. The moment had already broken, but no one knew how to put it away. And no one knew why he was still here, after closing, in a place he wasn't supposed to be. The room didn't fill. People just rearranged themselves into something tighter, meaner, more accidental. Bodies angling like they couldn't decide between leaving and circling him. And the worst part was how nobody coordinated it. How the chaos built itself out of tiny, stupid movements. Someone knocking over a stack of glasses behind the bar. A guy by the restroom door bumping his elbow into a metal frame hard enough to hiss. A girl trying to put her hair up with trembling fingers while staring straight at him through the mirror behind the counter. The bartender muttered, "We're closed, again." Softer this time, like he'd already given up on enforcing anything. His hand hovered near the light switch, but didn't touch it, because he didn't want to be the one who made the next wrong move. One of the remaining customers, a skinny kid in a denim jacket, whispered to his friend, "Ask him." And the friend shoved him in the ribs, whispering, "No, you," which made both of them laugh too loudly. The kind of laugh that breaks the air instead of filling it. Jungkook stood exactly where he had been, near the crates, near the mop bucket, like he'd been put there for storage. A girl in a green cardigan tried to walk past him to reach the exit, but her path cut too close, and she stopped mid-step, turned her body sideways, froze, then mumbled, "Sorry," to no one in particular, cheeks burning, because she hadn't even touched him, but it felt like she almost had. A guy near the bar squinted, stepped forward, then back again, like testing the temperature of water. Someone else said, "Is it really him?" Not in awe, but confusion, and another voice snapped back, "Why would he be here?" Which made 3 people look around, as if the place itself might explain. A girl in the corner lifted her phone under the table, pretending to check messages, but the camera lens caught the reflection from a beer tap, and the kid in the denim jacket saw it and whispered, "She's recording," which made her jolt, slam her phone face down, then mutter, "No, I wasn't," even though nobody had asked. The bartender sighed, wiped the same spot on the counter again and again, then finally said, "Sir, you really can't." But he didn't finish because Jungkook looked up at him, just a fraction of a second, nothing sharp, nothing challenging, but enough to make the bartender close his mouth and stare at the sink instead. Someone near the exit coughed, then coughed again, because the first cough sounded fake. A chair leg scraped, a bottle clinked, a girl's bracelet snagged on her sweater, and she cursed under her breath. Every sound was a mistake, every movement was a signal. And then the question came again, from the wrong person. A guy with a shaved head and a shaky grip on his drink blurted out, too loud, too blunt, "So, who you waiting for?" The words hit the room like someone had thrown something heavy at the floor. A girl gasped, someone laughed in disbelief, someone whispered, "Dude, shut up." Too late. Jungkook didn't react, not a flinch, not a blink. But the people around him did, shoulders tightening, eyes widening, phone slipping out halfway before being shoved back in, like everyone was trying not to acknowledge what was happening, but failing in real time. The guy with the shaved head shrugged, like he hadn't just broken the last invisible rule, keeping the room from collapsing into something worse. A girl tapped her nails nervously on a chair, realized the sound was too loud, stopped, then started again even louder. The bartender finally grabbed a rag and threw it over the taps as if that would help. And then, another slip. A girl near the entrance, voice trembling with either fear or excitement or both, said, "You're not supposed to be here." Not accusatory, not dramatic, just factual, like pointing out a fire in a trash can. Jungkook looked at her then, barely, but he did. And that was enough for everyone else to respond. Heads tilting, bodies shifting, air thickening, the room rearranging around the fact that someone had finally said what nobody wanted to acknowledge. A phone lit up, another did. Somewhere, a notification pinged way too loudly. Someone whispered his name. Someone else said, "Shut up." But it didn't matter. The room had already changed shape, and for the first time since he stepped out of the corridor, it felt like he was cornered. Not by walls, but by people who didn't know what they were doing, but kept doing it anyway. Someone near the stack of chairs made the next wrong sound. A high, thin squeak of metal, as he tried to pull one out to sit, then instantly regretted it, shoving it back so fast the legs screeched across the floor, setting every nerve in the room on edge. A girl flinched so visibly, her drink sloshed over the rim, dripping onto her shoes. She hissed a curse, wiped it with her sleeve, and then remembered whose eyes might be on her, and froze mid-motion, elbow bent awkwardly, looking like she'd been paused by some glitching hand. The kid in the denim jacket whispered, "Holy shit." Not because anything huge had happened, but because nothing was happening, and that was worse. The stillness wasn't calm, it was jammed, like the room itself was buffering around Jungkook's presence. Someone by the sink dropped a spoon, and it hit the counter with a metallic ping that felt too sharp, too intentional, even though it wasn't. The girl near the mirror kept checking her reflection, but never looking at her face, only at the figure behind her, like she was measuring distance, checking escape routes. A guy leaning on the pool table lifted one corner of the felt like he was inspecting damage, just to give his hand something to do. But the gesture looked so false, so frantic. It made another girl snort involuntarily, then slap her hand over her mouth as if she'd committed a crime. 3 people reached for their phones at once, not to film, not openly, but in that half-guilty way of pretending they were checking the time, messages, anything except the reason they were really touching their screens. One girl's hand shook so badly she turned on her flashlight by accident, and the beam hit Jungkook's shoes before she managed to kill it. She mouthed, "Sorry," even though he wasn't looking at her. and her friend elbowed her hard enough to make her stumble. Someone muttered, "This is insane," but quietly, like talking to themselves. Someone else whispered, "Just leave." But the word leave hung in the air wrong, because nobody knew if it was meant for him or them. The bartender tried again with authority he didn't have. "Sir, seriously, we need to close up." But the sentence came out brittle, wobbling, and a girl near the bar whispered, "Don't talk to him like that," under her breath, then immediately looked embarrassed for saying it, like she'd broken some imaginary hierarchy. A guy by the door shifted his stance, crossed and uncrossed his arms, then stepped aside as if making space. But space for what? For him to walk out? For the crowd to move in? No one knew. The air felt like a doorway waiting to be misused, and then someone finally, disastrously, tried to make light of the situation. A boy near the restroom laughed, a weird, forced cackle, and said, "Man, he's just hanging out. Relax." But his voice cracked on the last word, making the sentence sound more like a dare than reassurance. Head snapped toward him. A girl hissed, "Shut up." Someone kicked his ankle to make the laughing stop, and the sudden jolt made him spill his drink across the floor. The liquid spread toward the crates where Jungkook stood, and a girl actually gasped as if it might touch him, stepping forward to block it with her shoe, before realizing how ridiculous that looked, and stepping back, cheeks burning. Phones angled lower, but closer. People were inching forward without meaning to. One step, half step, shuffle. Collective gravity pulling them into a shape they'd deny forming. And in the center, Jungkook didn't answer, didn't move, didn't defend the question that still hung in the air. Why he was still here, after closing, in a place that felt too small for the person everyone now knew he was. The silence wasn't silence. It was scraping shoes, buzzing notifications, bad breathing, the static of social panic. And everyone felt it at once. The question wasn't going away. It was multiplying, and the room was starting to close in around it. Realized too late, and froze in the middle of the room with her hand halfway raised like she'd been caught stealing something. The hesitation made two others bump into her back, one muttering, "Move," before recognizing who she was blocking, and the word came out warped, apologetic, useless. Someone near the door tried to slide past, but misjudged the distance, brushing right against the corner of the bar, and knocking over an entire stack of plastic cups. The clatter exploding through the room like gunfire, and making three people gasp, and one guy swear loudly enough that head snapped toward him instead of the fallen cups. Jungkook didn't move, but the space around him did, contracting, bending, reshaping as bodies shuffled in crooked lines, pretending not to look, while staring so hard their faces tightened. A man in a leather jacket tried to open the door to leave, but the door stuck halfway, jamming, and for a horrifying second, it looked like he was blocking the only exit, trapping everyone in with the tension they'd accidentally created. Someone whispered, "Don't." Someone else whispered, "Why?" And a third whispered nothing at all, but still managed to sound terrified. A phone buzzed on a table, vibrating in place, inching toward the edge until it fell with a thud that made a girl flinch so violently her elbow hit another girl's ribs. The second girl yelped and dropped her own phone, and it skidded across the floor, straight toward Jungkook's foot. It stopped an inch away. No one breathed right. The bartender stepped forward, hesitated, stepped back, wiped his hands on a towel that was already clean, his eyes bouncing between the phone, the owner of the phone, and Jungkook's stillness, like he didn't know whose permission he needed to move. And then someone near the back whispered, too clear, too factual, "This is going to be everywhere." The words didn't rise. They sank, heavy, final. Enough to make everyone realize that the moment wasn't fixing itself, wasn't easing, wasn't dissolving. It was curdling, and they were all inside it with him, whether they wanted to be or not. The final break wasn't dramatic, just a boy near the stacked chairs, lifting his phone a little too high, a little too openly, like he'd forgotten for 1 second that everyone was pretending not to do exactly that. The gesture snapped the room in half. 3 people lurched toward him as if to push his arm down. 2 others stepped back like avoiding a splash. A girl whispered, "No, no, no," as if she could rewind the motion by saying it fast enough. But the boy didn't lower it. He froze mid-gesture, caught between fear and instinct, and the screen, bright and unhidden, reflected Jungkook's face in a warped, accidental angle that made the air go sharp. Someone hissed, "Oh my God!" Another tried to laugh, but the sound died halfway, turning into a choking breath. And then a woman near the bar backed into a stool so hard it toppled, the crash ricocheting through the room like confirmation. That was the moment the crowd stopped pretending. Phones rose, Not confidently, but chaotically, jerking up in crooked lines. Bodies angled, collided, scraped. A girl shoved past someone for a better view and immediately apologized without looking at who she'd hit. Jungkook still hadn't moved, but now he couldn't. The room had sealed around him like wet cement. People filming not him, but the fact of him. The wrongness of the place. The impossibility of explaining any of it later. Someone near the restroom murmured, "Why here?" Someone else said, "He wasn't supposed." And a third cut in, "Just get something. Hurry." As if the moment itself were slipping away. The bartender stepped back toward the register, not to help, but to distance himself, palms flat on the counter, eyes wide and unfocused. And then, a final shudder. One more flash, too bright, too direct, aimed straight at him. Nobody screamed, nobody cheered, nobody understood what to do with their bodies. The door, still half stuck, stayed closed. The circle stayed uneven. The question stayed hanging. And the night didn't end. It just stopped making sense, leaving everyone staring at the same impossible picture forming in real time. A scene so wrong it felt like a dare to even look at it.